Where we left off last time, you had just mastered the gear drive, and after I got done with all of that, I was tired, so I took a break and then put all my tools away and then cleaned everything up, and everything was wonderful. Then I thought I'd tighten these bolts up, so I tightened them all up, and on the very last bolt, I got up to put my wrench away, and it hung on that and pulled the cam out, and of course I lost my space. But I can't be but a few teeth off. I'll find it. But that wasn't good. I had a cam button for this, and I didn't know if you had to have a cam button with a flat tappet cam. You know, it's on a chain. You know, it drives the taper of the lifters, drive it that way, and you don't have to have it. I really didn't know. So I thought, well, I've got one, so I'll run it. Well, when I measured everything up, this was real hard to measure. There's nothing easy to measure here, from the back of this plate to there's the cover, but you got this button and you got to figure out how far that goes and how deep is that and where's the cam and where's the end of the adapter. A lot of arithmetic. It was a lot of thinking, but I think I'm there. I made a new one because the other one didn't really have much, and it wasn't tight enough in this hub anyway. So got lucky on the press fit going in. It was just absolutely perfect. That's normally hard to get my lathe work down in tenths where it'll press in there right. That was wonderful. So we'll test that in a minute and see what the thrust is, but this is the front, and then you have this steel button here to ride against the brass button. I've got this Edelbrock head on here. Disregard that. I had to do some mock-up with the headers and the oil system. I've been working on this oil system for 6 months, and it's just terrible. I finally gave up. What I wanted to do is not going to work right now until I get new headers. So I put the oil pan I was going to run was a dual line and dragster pan, and it just didn't look right with we're on an unlimited budget build. We don't need an old pan on there. So I went and got some different fittings, and we'll run this pan because it's pretty. And then the balancer, I had a little issue. It was trying to hit. Normally on a gear drive, you run something with a little longer snout, and it spaces it out further. But my other front cover was so thick, I thought this was going to make it, but it lacked a few thousandths. But luckily, ATI makes these shims. The only size they make them in is 93, which is too thick, but I'm going to surface grind it down a little bit to make it a little better, And I know you thought that this would fit on there, but no, I had to grind and test fit and grind and test fit and grind. That went on for about 30 minutes. So I didn't want you to think that there was going to be anything easy on this build, since I've been on it for 30 days and just finally got a short block together. But things are moving. I've got to grind that flat, get the balancer on it, and we'll go ahead and check the thrust now. Let me get all this set up. This has got an O-ring seal here, so to make this easy to take on and off, I just took the O-ring off for now, and that way it won't affect anything because it's on the side. Okay, so now we check our thrust. We have the Torrington bearing on the back side, and then we have the thrust button on the front side. Yeah. Okay. Well, in real numbers we got 4. Okay. I'm happy with that. In theory, it's never supposed to go forward anyway, but since we're a flat tappet, but that's okay. We're good. I'm happy. Now we ought to look at the head gaskets. Of course, you know the infamous brad that's going to have to be fixed. We'll take that out, safety wire it out here. But we knew that was going to happen, so we're not real upset. In theory, of course, this brad hangs over the deck. But because of the way this particular head is made, you know, you would think that this would flex up. This is about 140 thick and the gasket's 40 thick. So you would think this might be able to flex up and, you know, not be an issue, but there's no sense whatsoever in depending on that to happen. The last thing you want is a water leak. So just cut the top of the brad off, push it out, and do the safety wire gimmick, and then you won't do it right. You know what I mean? Now let's check the head gasket for pushrod clearance. The machining on the KB block is such that on the intake side the hole is much bigger than the intake. So you don't have to worry about hitting the block, and the intake's never a problem child anyway. Here's the problem every time. It is the exhaust. When the lifter's all the way down, it's going to get tight right here. But now when you look at this, and you know, I don't know what that is. Oh, 30 thousandths, maybe 20. But you can't blindly go grinding this until you know there's a problem, because this is all you've got for a head gasket right here. You know, you're tempted to want to make this fit because you know there's going to be it's always close there. So you want to grind it, but you can't until you find out that it's a real problem instead of a perceived problem on your part. Because you have nothing to work with when we're talking about 400 or 500 bore. You know, a lot of things are going to be easier at 425, but I don't know anybody that wants to build a 425 bore block. 4500 is a lot more fun. So there's the problem child, but we're not going to do anything until we check it out with the push rods, turning the motor, check everybody out, make sure that it's not going to hit anything. Now let's check the gasket on the head. As you can see, the gasket is bigger than the intake hole. So it's definitely not going to be a problem there, even though when we tried it on the block, it looked like the end of the world had come. But in reality, there's no problem here. The exhaust, of course, there is a problem right there. And I marked each cylinder to where I'd have to grind out if we find out in the mock-up that it has to be ground. You know, you're hoping it doesn't because you don't want to lose any head gasket material. But that's where it's the tightest, right here. So that's what we'll do. We'll stick it on there and see how it looks. Now we'll check our pushrod clearance in the head and the head gasket. Intake is usually not a problem, and it wasn't in this case. I've turned it through its whole cycle. It's, you know, it's not going to move a lot. It's not going to cause you a lot of problems. You just check it anyway, especially considering how bad that gasket looked, but turned out to be a non-event, as we'll see that on the head part too. But the exhaust is, like always, super tight with the lifter all the way down. That's when it's at its closest. As the lifter rises, the push rod will move up in the hole. But when it's down, sometimes you have to put the light back here to get a good view of it. But I mean, it looks to me like there's clearance. I don't It didn't look that way when you mock it up on the block. But everything looks good. But we'll check it with some paper and make sure we can slide some paper underneath it, and that'll kind of make us be reassured, shall we say. Okay, let's see if we can slide some paper under here and run it all the way up there. See, it's just, it looks like there's just a little bit of room, but nonetheless, it's there. So, as bad as they looked when they were on the block, they're fine. See? It's all good. So it looks like we've got good clearance between the rocker arm and the retainer. These retainers sometimes get kind of close there, but we're all good. And the exhaust rockers the same way. No, I'm not going to make you sit through another oil pump video, but we should at least go over the basics of putting this together. It's just a stock high volume milling oil pump. Take it apart, wash it all out in the bar salt tank or whatever you use. Blow everything off, because you know how fast they flash rust. Look for chips, look for any problems. The only problem I really found on this one was these castings have probably changed over the decades, and these Mylodon top covers don't like this particular casting. And what they'll try to interfere right there. And you may have to grind this off right here to where you get clearance. You want to be able to see daylight through right there when you get done, because the bolts won't start sometimes, and you know that you got a problem, so fix it. Don't just ignore it. And of course I had to get rid of the regular Mylodon inlet fitting because the Aeroquip is much sexier with this radiused inlet. And that's about it. Put it back together. Just use the motor oil that you're going to start up with, and make sure you get oil all over everywhere. Stick it in backwards and frontwards and all in here, and because you know this thing's going to be rusting all the time you're thinking about it. So just oil it all up, put it back together. Everything will be good.